the captive audience. It is the
Don't
20th.
don't scroll by. Don't scroll by. We're trying to get our average up on this first 3 seconds. Okay, stay here with us.
Stay with us. Stay. I'll tell you the date. It's the 20th of September. You had to wait long enough to hear that. I'm Kevin Moore. This is David Darnell. We were just looking at our insights as to how long people hang around, and we thought, hey, we need to lengthen that time. So all of you watching, hang around. It's going to be a fun one today. I got an email first thing this morning that I usually ignore, except the subject line is irresistible. It was from Frontier Airlines, and it said, "Pandemic is 100% over, comma, enjoy 100% off your next flight."
Really?
Yeah. And both 100%s got my attention, and I think we know why they're sending that email out, because they would have gotten hate emails if they had sent that out just a few weeks ago. But President Brandon has declared the pandemic is over, so now everybody's jumping on, and why not? It does seem like there's some consternation in Brandonville because apparently a lot of people expected this to go on forever, so they could justify forcing you and I to wear masks wherever we go.
Yeah, it appears that the pandemic, quote, pandemic and COVID has run their course as a political tool. I heard today that Democrats, the collective Democrat political machine, have spent 10 times more on the abortion issue this cycle than the next issue, and a whopping 20 times more messaging on abortion than they did in the 2018 midterms. So apparently COVID's not going to work for them. They're probably thinking that raiding Trump's wife's underwear drawer is not going to work for them. So they're gonna hit abortion, and I just don't think it's going to work anymore.
I don't think they can make all the giant, stinking, smoldering mess that they've turned the country into make people look past that and say, "Oh, look at this sparkly thing over here." It's like an Olin Mills photographer with a colicky, diaper-rashed child trying to get them to smile.
Yeah.
Look at the birdie.
Republicans are going to force you to be pregnant and force you to have children and take away your birth control, and you'll have no more rights. That's what Republicans are going to do.
Yeah, as they take away and negate our rights and cancel people altogether. But I am jumping ahead in our agenda because
that's okay.
There's more to talk about with President Brandon. He may have actually killed his own student debt plan, which is hilarious because that was predicated on that we are in a national emergency, and therefore the unending national emergency could allow him special powers to take debt that belongs to individuals and assign it to taxpayers, which was an iffy proposition to begin with. But now, I wonder if they're going to quote him in court from his CBS interview with fake journalist Scott Pelley.
What did he say?
Oh, that's what he just is asking. He goes, "So what's going on with the COVID? It's over." Okay. Well, then.
Oh, that's where he said that?
No, it's still in a national emergency, but it's over.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Well, good. Yeah. Thank you, all of you Democrats, for curing us of COVID.
Well, there are people angry, and they are trying to walk it back, but I don't think you can walk that one back, because actually I do think that, as you said, it was election related, and he was just doing this in order to, assuage people, to make them feel better so that they'll vote for, more Brandon policies here in people, which I don't think that's going to help either. What do you think?
No, I don't think it's going to help people when they go to the grocery store and they fill up their bags and they go to the checkout and they have a mild heart attack. They gack at how much it costs for 3 bags of groceries. I don't think that's going to help. And that's really what people are concerned about. I mean, people vote their pocketbook.
They do, and they're also just not believing the constant fear porn that used to work on them. It's like they've built up a resistance to it now, and so people I know that were dead serious about masks actually laugh openly about people wearing masks now when in situations that it's totally absurd. You see people by themselves in cars still driving around with a mask, and I'm like,
you do, yeah.
that's a mental illness. It's a mental illness.
Or a fashion statement.
Yeah, or that. I mean, I still like the one with President Brandon where we use it in our graphics on the captive audience page, and it's like him pulling the mask, and it's like over his. You can just see his eyebrows, his face. Yeah. I'm like, that's the best use I've seen of a mask so far in the pandemic. It's
some
just
people
him,
some people look better with a mask, I think.
I think it makes you forget what an idiot is, just sort of. But so maybe it's more than a fashion statement. It's a way to rehab his image by preventing us from seeing him. It's like presidential peekaboo. It's kind of like that.
Oh, yeah. Well, presidential peekaboo is what he played. Well, I guess not presidential, but he played peekaboo when he was running for office in 2020. Remember when nobody ever saw him? And then
peekaboo from the basement window.
And then the appearances he did make were so hilarious because they had 12 people at his big rally in these pods, spaced 20 feet apart. It's just
or in cars honking their horns like.
Oh gosh, man.
Well, they aren't going to be quite as jovial as about this next piece of news. So, Anthony Fauci has made it back into the news, but in a way that I think is going to, we're going to remember this moment if this actually goes through whatever vetting process it has to. The EcoHealth Alliance, which is a major funder of the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the former vice president of that organization. So the person who knew everything, was the second most powerful person in EcoHealth Alliance, which got its money from the National Institutes of Health and the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which of course is Fauci's deal, right? He said the process of developing SARS-CoV-2 was described in detail in the proposal submitted to and ultimately funded by the National Institutes for Health, the National Institutes for Allergy and Infectious Disease, by EcoHealth Alliance, with the Wuhan Institute of Virology and University of North Carolina listed as collaborators. This is a sworn declaration by a guy named Andrew Huff that, in fact, what they did is they funded and knew they were funding the creation of COVID-19 through this.
Oh, you can't say that out loud, Kevin.
I was just reading an article, and if they want to, ban this article, they can. But here's what he said. This is a guy who, was obviously in the know, and he said Anthony Fauci funded the creation of SARS-CoV-2 and lied to Congress about funding gain-of-function work.
Yeah.
And it's a claim also made recently by the CDC director under Trump, Robert Redfield. Anthony Fauci and others coordinated to cover up the funding of the gain-of-function work that resulted in SARS-CoV-2. Huff is a former U.S. Army infantryman in Iraq and a former research fellow in the Department of Homeland Security. He shared the full packet of information he has on Twitter, saying it's sent to U.S. Senate and Congress last week. And he is going to be coming out with a book this fall called The Truth About Wuhan.
Wow.
About damn time.
Yeah, so these people who developed this spent money on it. Apparently, it was the American taxpayer to a great extent.
Paid for it.
Yeah. So these people who developed this, and ultimately it apparently escaped from a lab. I think we can say that now. It wasn't some Chinese guy biting the head off of a bat.
Whatever that little platypus Vulcan thing is, or
whatever we were told at the beginning. So are these people not responsible for the deaths of more than 1 million Americans?
yeah, and then millions around the world, as well as what, 15 trillion, $20 trillion in economic activity destroyed. Yeah, learning deficiency and lack of development for tens of millions of children in the United States and around the world. I mean,
Yeah.
this guy was in charge of the thing, of fixing the thing or addressing the thing that he funded, according to this article and this sworn testimony.
Wow. Well, that's a bombshell. Of course, I think we, a lot of us early on after the initial lies wore out, kind of hinted to the fact that this thing was probably engineered and escaped from a lab in Wuhan. It'll be interesting to see if it'll be interesting when that book comes out, but to see if anybody picks it up and runs with it. I mean, it seems to me, it's absolutely incredible that Fauci was put in charge of this thing. And Fauci, I mean, I suppose maybe it makes sense. Fauci helped develop this thing, and Fauci was put in charge of this thing in the United States. And a lot of the rest of the world followed our lead on this. It seems amazing that the guy should be liable for this, shouldn't he?
Liable, and I gotta say that if you lie to Congress for especially about something like this, if you can't prosecute somebody for lying to Congress about something that's now contradicted by sworn testimony from somebody who supplies evidence of this, and you can't be prosecuted and sent to jail, should be like forever, like however long Fauci lives. I mean, that just sounds like the absolute minimum. Right?
Yeah,
you
it
could
does.
almost say it's treason because it involved covering up this activity, colluding with a foreign power,
Right.
which is exactly what he did.
And right. Well, it's at the very least,
it should be death.
At the very least, it's terrorism. I mean, it's a bioweapon. I wouldn't be surprised. Well, I think people should. I know people who lost their loved ones.
Yep.
And you do too. And they should probably seek compensation from Fauci. I understand Fauci makes a fair amount of money.
Well, and the ironic thing is he was acting on behalf of the United States government, which, as we know from our friend Solomon Yu, probably could have gotten some compensation or damages from the Chinese Communist Party. Well, guess what? The Chinese Communist Party is going to cite this guy and say, no, you can't get that money from us because you guys are the ones who gave it to us and funded it.
Yeah. And that's the truth, according to this guy. I'm not sure he has any reason to lie.
Well, we're going to find out more about this. The media is going to try to bury it. Then they're going to try to blame Trump for it. And then they're going to try everything else. And then finally, somebody's going to, somebody's going to have to fry for it. Fauci's retiring anyway.
Right.
Maybe he should retire to a leper colony or something. I mean, it just seems like there's got to be some consequence for him and during his mortal life here. I don't think he's going to do too well after that mortal life either. But hey, what do I know? That's above my pay grade. So listen, Brandon, President Brandon, he gave that speech in front of that red screen, with Marine Corps.
Darth Vader speech.
Yeah, the Darth Brandon speech. Yep. Turns out that one actually did backfire with the American people, according to a poll by the Trafalgar Group, who actually is one of the only entities that polled 2020 correctly.
That's right.
Yep. And so it's a nationwide survey, September 7th through 9th of 2,000 likely voters. And the reaction is that it may have been one of the worst speeches in American political history. Biden thinks America's divided.
That's a pretty strong statement.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. But
you mean Hitler polled better? Or?
Yeah, maybe. Well,
Gorbachev.
American political history, but still.
Okay.
Um, but here's the thing. So Brandon thinks that it's a 50-50 country, but this poll says it's a 60-40 country, with 60% agreeing with the right and 40 with the left on this. And 56% of those responding found Biden's language inappropriate. 54% said grossly exaggerated its depiction of possibly imminent political violence by the right. And in fact, 55% said they were concerned about the potential for political violence stemming from the left rather than arising out of so-called MAGA groups.
Why would they be worried about that? 2 years of riots in every major
I don't
city.
know.
Yeah.
Antifa is just an idea. What could worry
Yeah.
the American people about that? And of course, it just kept going after they said it was going to stop, and it just kept going. And state after state after state, since this is mostly a congressional focused election, Senate and House at the federal level, turns out that we're starting to pull catch up and starting to pull out ahead of Democrats in almost all of the states where it's close and where we have to win. Georgia, Pennsylvania, Ohio is a strong lead in Ohio for J.D. Vance. And Senator Johnson leads in Wisconsin. So it might turn out to be one of the biggest blunders in American political history if it manifests itself the way the polling seems to indicate in the election. That couldn't happen to a nicer administration.
I absolutely agree. I think who did we hear Saturday night that said this? The American people will eventually get it right after they exhaust every other possibility.
That was Winston Churchill, actually, said that when he was trying to figure out when the United States might get involved with World War II.
Right.
He said, "We know our American friends will do the right thing after they've tried everything else."
Well, we've tried Brandon.
Yeah, we've tried Brandon.
He has been found wanting, found lacking.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want to return Brandon to the store and get a refund.
The guy really needs to retire. I mean, he's been on the Hill for 50 years. Why, oh man. Oh, I mean, I know why, because their bench was empty. The Clintons were spoiled. But man.
Yeah, he might be taking a wrecking ball to the Democrat Party while he's at it. They'll, wiggle out of it and try to recover at some point. But boy, don't they deserve a super duper walloping just for, and we haven't even gotten to some of the things. I mean, this is just from the last couple of days, like the last 48 hours. I'll just read these off and we can kind of just react at the end. FBI paid informant who made up Russia collusion dossier. The FBI was paying the informant who created the Russia collusion dossier. An FBI whistleblower has gone to Jim Jordan, congressman, ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, and provided him testimony and evidence that the FBI right now is manipulating the case files of January 6th cases to create the illusion of a national crisis to help Brandon. And this is somebody at the FBI who, by the way, as I understand it, I just heard, has been suspended and is facing reassignment because Democrats, they would never let anything happen to a whistleblower. Because remember how sacrosanct that was, an inviolable whistleblower was?
Yeah, believe all whistleblowers.
Believe all whistleblowers. Well, you know what? They will destroy all whistleblowers that blow their whistles in the wrong direction. That's how they deal with them. Now, federal appeals court has dismissed a Democrat January 6th committee case that sought to go and force the RNC to hand over all of its donor information straight out of its Salesforce software management system. including all of the programming and everything to show exactly how they seek and solicit donations. In other words, they wanted to get the data and the campaign strategy from the RNC for 2020.
Yeah.
And that and the January 6th committee abandoned their subpoena, and the federal appeals court smacked them and dismissed the case.
Good.
That didn't make it, I bet, anywhere on the other alphabet networks that don't usually cover this. You know, and then the last story in this little string of stories: House Democrats block Chinese Communist Party Hunter Brandon investigation evidence. They don't want anybody to see it. They said it's a naked partisan effort to get this evidence, to see what involvement President Brandon had with Hunter Biden and the Chinese Communist Party, and if he got money from it. You know, you heard all these things that Congress must absolutely have unlimited means, no constraints to investigate during the two fake impeachments and then innumerable other investigations that were conducted, the Mueller investigation, all that stuff. We got speech after speech from leftist talking heads that if we did anything, you know, we should go to jail and be prosecuted. And what do they do? In one of the most obvious examples of a commander-in-chief who might actually be compromised and jeopardizing national security now. And the Democrats put politics above that, said, I don't care. The country might invade Taiwan, crash the whole economy.
Yeah.
And Brandon's apparently, I don't know, doesn't appear to be that interested in addressing the issue.
They have there's no bottom to what they'll do. I mean, you know, the CCP can go low, they'll go lower.
That's actually the best way to put it, because you'd think that they would have looked at what has happened recently and then started maybe changing course. And it's pretty clear, especially with that Dark Brandon speech, they're doubling and tripling down on this. They think this is the way to go, is to actually, and they're going to turn the justice system into like something to just attack their political opponents.
They're not even hiding it anymore.
No, and just think how important it is that that we ended up with judges appointed by President Trump.
Very important.
Judiciary. And where would we be if that hadn't happened?
Yeah, just had that conversation yesterday, as a matter of fact. We would be, well, we'd be closer to refreshing the Tree of Liberty.
Yeah, I think that's actually well put, which, you know, I hope isn't a strong possibility at this point, but that's why we got to do our job here. Anybody that's not voting or is hearing information says, I'm sick of both sides. And no, wait a second. One side's in charge and they're doing all the stuff I just listed. All of it.
Yeah.
That's them.
Yeah, I just found another, he was I don't know if he was actually a candidate for governor. His first name's Monty. I can't remember his last name, but found him on Twitter. He followed one of my Twitter accounts, and he's advocating against the Republican. Well, his Twitter bio says that he's uniting Republicans again, and his tweets are advocating against voting for Christine Drazan, but instead writing him in because he's the guy that can get it done. And I keep seeing these things, and I go, man, this is not how we win. This is not how Democrats win.
No, and it's also Democrats. In fact, we'll talk about the governor's race, but there's the progressive candidate just agreed to drop out because apparently there already is a progressive candidate in the race.
Gosh, no kidding.
So they figure these things out and they make arrangements so that this kind of stuff doesn't happen. Well, onward and upward. You know how Kotek is probably not that good of a person. You know it because there's apparently no one within her inner circle that cares about her enough
to tell her when she was at Pendleton that she looked stupid.
Oh, no,
And
we're
that
going
her-
to talk
and
about
that
that.
her- and that her hat was on backwards. Apparently, no one cares about her enough to let her know that.
Or she's too arrogant to listen. One of the two. No, little bit more Brandon news. He just said in that CBS interview that the record inflation that we're experiencing, the highest since 1980. He said it's just an inch that it has progressed. That it's just an inch. It's just a tiny little bit. He's celebrating that when he was asked about how this is actually really impacting Americans. And you know what's funny about him saying that is that 63% of Americans, according to a poll here, actually totally disagree with him.
They 63% think that their groceries are more expensive.
They say they're falling behind on the cost of living, and which really means that they're getting poor, and they're being told by the president that it's just a little smidgen of a, whatchamacallit. Don't worry about it. We're doing great. What kind of campaign strategy is that?
I hope it's a losing campaign strategy.
And he can't help himself. He just says these things, and then the next day there's a whole host of people that have to roll it back every time that he says.
Didn't he say that inflation was zero? The last numbers or the numbers before that were released?
Yeah, he said that back in between June and July, and that was only because even though food prices are dramatically soaring. The fuel prices went down just a bit for 1 month compared to what they've done.
Yeah. Your July 4th cost you 13 cents less.
Yeah, that's
than
right.
It could have.
Well, get this. The price of what are called pantry staples, the things that you really need every day just to make, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, have increased at the fastest rate since November 1980, 11.4% increase in 1 year, outpacing overall inflation of 8.3%. I just posted the link to this, and in fact, the focus of this article is how people in Portland are experiencing this, but it's everywhere.
And who was president in 1980?
Yeah, James Earl Carter. Yes. The famous picture of him with his finger in his nose, picking the winners. That's one of my favorite all time. I've been trying to find that someplace because that's.
Has it been scrubbed?
Yeah, but Brandon is maybe making Jimmy Carter look brilliant, comparatively speaking. I mean,
well,
Jimmy Carter called it a malaise. Brandon's acting like it's so awesome. It's super awesome.
Yeah. I remember those times. Things were expensive. Interest rates were mortgage rates were 17%, if I remember correctly. Yeah. You think that they're high now? It's 6%.
Well, they must necessarily eventually exceed the rate of inflation, or actually there's no way to attract money to be saved because you got to spend it before it shrinks.
Right. Yep.
No, it's economics 101, right? So it's now.
It is, but I've noticed in the last decade there seems to be a disconnect between the money supply and inflation. Have you noticed that as well? I mean, back in the 70s or 80s, when the money supply was increased, which is the true definition of inflation, prices soared, and then a Fed chairman wishing to keep that from happening would shrink the money supply, and then prices would stabilize. But I don't know, man. It seems like we've been on a printing spree that doesn't. I mean, it just recently it feels like it's starting to materialize, but it seems like with the amount of money that's been printed in the last 4 years, which I think is more money than ever before printed in the entire history of the country, something like that, or last couple of years. The inflation should be, high double digits. Of course, we know they manipulate the numbers, and true inflation is probably 12, 14%. And those of us at the gas pump, those of us at the grocery store, we all, we know what it really is. It's a hell of a lot more than 8 or 9.
Well, they actually the bureau that actually calculates inflation changed how they do it, which I don't know the exact explanation for, but if you used the historic method, the one from 1980 that was
Hmm.
used to calculate what inflation is, it would be something like 14 or 15% now.
Right.
So they're not even hiding the fact that, this is a manipulated number. It's exactly what it is. But then also, there's some things that have changed in the last, say, 40, 50 years. Globalization, international trade is much more significant than it was then. And there's a lot of countries in the world that are willing to accept dollars over anything else to purchase goods from them, because we are the least worst currency in the world.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
does have something to do with that. As long as the rest of the world's willing to accept dollars, but we might have pushed it here. We might have pushed too far. And
Yeah.
China. See, that's the thing. China, oh, they're a superpower. Well, they don't apparently value their own currency very much. They'd rather have dollars. That's
Oh yeah.
actually,
Yeah. Yeah. Entire
so
world runs on dollars.
that's right. It does. It's the global currency, and that's the only reason why we've gotten away with it. But that's not sound economic policy. That's just global inflation, which eventually has hit us here. Now, shifting gears to Oregon. Oregon Supreme Court has decided they're not going to bother hearing the appeal of that $1 billion timber verdict, which, if we remind everyone, that the circuit court, I think in Lynn County, found in favor of the plaintiffs who sued because there is a legal commitment by the state
Yeah.
to maximize the value of the forest land to the benefit of the counties that for which these state forests are controlled.
Right.
And that was really to coax people to turning all this forest land over to the government, and then let them take care of it. But then it would still be permitted to be forested, timber to be harvested, and then that would go to the state governments, which is supposed to fund. The county governments, which are supposed to fund their public safety, police, fire, local education costs, and instead they have abandoned that and cost them. Well, the court found in 2019 that it amounted to $1.1 billion. This went to an appellate court, the Oregon Court of Appeals, the one that Vance Day ran for and didn't succeed at winning. That same court decided no, they don't have to do that. They can just break their legal commitment, and they did it by reinterpreting what a word meant, which is greatest permanent value of those lands to the state, because now they've decided the greatest permanent value is not monetary, it's feeling good about trees. Which, by the way, is you can grow more of them. Do you hear about that? They can grow more of them. If you cut them down, you can grow more.
I've witnessed it firsthand. I drove up through the middle of the state today, and then drove across the mountains, and I've noticed a lot of things about trees. They grow back. They seem to grow back in more numbers than what the original trees are. Presumably, those are the seed trees. And I have noticed that they also provide fuel for forest fires.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they emit tons of CO2 when you burn them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is apparently going to kill us all, because it's a severe pollutant that. You're breathing it out. I'm sorry.
So what you're saying is the state appealed it because the counties, coalition of counties,
the plaintiffs appealed it to the Supreme Court, because the appeals court
overturned it.
The state appealed it to the appeals court. That's the second tier, and then the next tier up, the Kate Brown completely appointed state Supreme Court, or almost completely appointed state Supreme Court, decided not to hear the appeal, which then leaves the lower court's judgment in place, which is the same as saying that they effectively agree with the Court of Appeals.
Yeah.
So, screw you,
Puts the
all you
county-
counties.
Yeah, it puts the county in a bind. The counties received what was called PILT, P-I-L-T, payment in lieu of taxes, once logging stopped on the ONC lands somewhere in the mid-90s. And those payments, those PILT, that PILT has been steadily decreased to most recently is virtually nothing. And so counties are struggling. They've got unfunded mandates from both the state and the federal government, and then they are subject to the rising costs that everyone else is subject to. And then, of course, they have, fortunately, smart people don't have, but they have, PERS. And PERS is the monkey on the back of every municipality, school district, and state agency, and any other agency that has a reprehensible public employees union representing their people with this unrealistic, unsustainable, corruptly negotiated PERS contract. So yeah, they're in a bind. I mean, I was pretty stoked when they won that lawsuit, because they did win it, and then apparently the state appealed, and the appeal was sustained, and now they're screwed.
Yep. So that's why judges really matter, and that's why why don't we talk about the governor's race next? Because the governor appoints, I think it's something on the order of like 70 or 80% of all the judges that hold office in the state, because it was supposed to be an exception, right? When somebody, died or retired or just resigned for whatever reason, that the governor would appoint somebody to fill out that vacancy. But then there's a whole scam where those people then, the people retire and make it so that they can load the position with an incumbent. They get their name on the ballot with a little I next to it. And then most of the time, nobody runs against them, because it's actually really hard if you're a lawyer that might potentially have to argue a case in front of that judge to get any clients to want you. And so
you have to take a big pay cut too.
You have to take a big pay cut. And so, that's why it was courageous what Vance Day did. He brought light to that. But that means that the governor's race will determine what kind of judiciary you have going forward.
Yeah.
Whether this continues to happen, and whether everybody that doesn't live in the Portland metro area or the Willamette Valley or one of the urban centers doesn't completely get their livelihoods destroyed and their county governments defunded by corrupt leftists from those urban centers. Well, just to give you an idea of what one of those corrupt leftists from an urban center, specifically Portland, looks like, I'm pasting in the link to what you made reference to earlier, which is that Tina Kotek went out to the Pendleton rodeo, and in the parade there, and it kind of just says everything that's wrong with the Democrat Party and how much they absolutely hate and want to screw over and destroy rural Oregon. That she was wearing this cowboy hat in a way that just, it's cartoonish, what she looks like. And then you pointed out it was on backwards.
Yeah, her hat was on backwards.
And she only rode a few blocks before making an early exit. Gee, I wonder if it was because of the booze.
Well, I feel bad for her, that there's no one apparently that cares enough about her to go, hey, you look stupid, don't do that, and by the way, turn your hat around because it's on backwards.
Yeah. I think that we have to make sure the candidate that has the best chance of winning and defeating Tina Kotek is Christine Drazan. She's leading in every poll that's been done by a small percentage. Then there's this candidate who, Betsy Johnson, who isn't going to win, who's stuck, who's never in any poll showed up higher, except the one she paid someone to conduct, never showed up any higher than 21%. She's basically in the high teens, according to my sources, consistently. and she had to spend $1 million to get 20,000 plus signatures. $1 million. Imagine what the Recall Kate Brown campaign could have done with $1 million.
We probably could have pushed it across the finish line,
and then run an ad campaign in once it was on the ballot. No, that. So Betsy Johnson is. You just have to hope that she continues maybe to do a great job at getting Democrats who don't want to vote for Republicans to vote for her instead of Tina Kotex. And but Christine Drazan can not only win, but she would represent an across-the-board shift in policies and all these things we talk about here every single night that we're on.
Yeah.
And that's what people want.
And it's not just judges either. She appoints somewhere around 250 to 300 agency heads. I mean, we have agency heads that have been, that are have direct effect on Oregon administrative rules, which are law, OARs, and we need to get rid of them.
Yeah. So the bureaucratic state is enormously powerful in Oregon.
Yes.
And that's why groups like the Oregon Health Authority can just, the governor just sits back, appoints these people, and then they promulgate all these rules, like the still permanent mask mandate rule that they can flip on anytime they want and force you to put things on your face that don't necessarily do anything, actually.
Right.
And then other than make your kids fall behind in their speech abilities and learning in school. But bad news is the Democrat Governors Association is actually starting to pour money into this race. They've written the single largest check so far in the race, $1.25 million to Tina Kotek's campaign. She's raised a total of $3.1 million. However, Christine Drazan is competing very well with this. She has gotten 2 checks of $1 million from the Republican Governors Association, and this is a serious race. The national people, they don't put money in because of some emotional thing. They look at it and they say, we've seen a poll, this person's going to win, and they're in. The question I have for everybody is, are you in? Are you going to donate to this campaign and give them what they need to get across the finish line? It's not just up to people somewhere else in the country. It's up to us.
Well, it is. It is. And there's a lot of good comments, by the way. Bobby says, if we get Christine in as governor, will this show continue? Well, yes, it will. And we'll have the governor on the show.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I also think that it'll be an opportunity to put an end to the show that had Democrats destroying the state. That's the biggest thing, too, because frankly, there's 100 ways. I just read off 48 hours of news listing 5 stories that are happening at the national level where they're literally trying to criminalize Republicans and make it so corrupt Democrats who are betraying our country can't be investigated. We got a lot more work to do.
Yeah,
we got to keep making people aware of it.
Yeah, well, by the left's current narrative and their standard, Joe Biden is the biggest coyote in the world.
Yeah, he is a human smuggler extraordinaire.
He's the El Chapo of human smugglers.
Yeah, and you know what else he is? Because we know he's promoted these policies. His administration's promoted these policies. 2 things kind of hit the news here, and I just want to kind of conclude on these stories. So the Oregon Board of Education has denied a petition to keep tampons out of boys' restrooms. And you might say, oh, well, why the hell are they doing that? And the reason why they're doing that is because the Democrats passed a law requiring it. However, somebody decided to challenge that. And when they did, it's called the Menstrual Dignity Act of 2021. And here's what they said. Males, all capital letters, do not menstruate and should not be included in the definition of student bathroom inclusion when providing feminine hygiene products for menstruating females. And the Oregon Department of Education, appointed by the governor, right?
Yeah.
They accepted public comment from July 6th through the 20th. They received 150 responses. And majority of the comments supported this petition to block this from happening. And they said, we don't care. We're going to do it anyway. And so now this is what you get. That's the government that you're getting now. And so do we have a lot more work to do? Our state is loaded with idiots that will make decisions like this at every level of government, and buried deep inside the state government too. Let's not forget that. There's a 40-year-old deep state stuck somewhere inside that bureaucracy that makes rules that we have to deal with.
Yeah. There's a lot of work to do, and we'll keep doing a little bit at a time.
And it's so bad, and this is actually a humorous thing to end on. Bill Maher, who's a famous liberal, actually has been slamming Democrats for promoting this garbage. Specifically, he said that the curriculum that is being promoted in the Portland Public Schools, he calls it the unified theory of wokeness. And he just trashes it. And it's hilarious. I mean, he uses comedic graphics, and you should watch it because I like to end on something that can make everybody laugh and yet share it with your friends, especially the ones who think that this stuff isn't true. We can educate people out there, even adults that have been sucked into this stuff.
Yeah, he said the party of JFK has become the party of OMG and WTF.
That's great. I mean, he does humor, as Saul Alinsky said, is the most powerful weapon because there's no defense against it. And he actually said, look, in Portland, the sexual revolution starts in kindergarten. Just where you'd expect the sexual revolution to begin.
Yeah.
So on that note, I think we've given people a laugh, but we gave you information, and hopefully you'll take all of this and share it with everyone you know.
Please do. Thanks for watching. Thanks for all the comments. I wish I could respond to the comments in this thing here, but it apparently does not have the option. But great comments tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. But do share the show with like 5 or 10 other people, because we want to grow the number of people that see this every week, and we're going to continue on that effort ourselves. We may be seeking sponsors to promote the show, and we're adding. My next project here is to add Rumble and several other of the Telegram and several other ways that people can follow and watch the show and get the information that, frankly, in Oregon, this type of show, you can't really get it anywhere else. We're pretty much the only ones consistently doing this, and it's needed.
Yes, we are consistent. There's been some comers and some goers, but most of them have gone, and we're still here.
We're still here. We must be getting up to 300 shows now. We're pretty close. So we'll keep plugging away. We just need you to keep sharing it. And David, thank you for joining me here tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin. It's fun.
And thanks to all of you for being our viewers. We will see you tomorrow night. It should be Don and Sonny on the next episode of The Captive Audience. I'll bet Sonny will have something to say about Tina Kotek's hat. She was there at the event. So I'll be watching. I hope all of you guys watch too.
Yeah. Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.